There will eventually be an intro here. Welcome back to Drumspeak. Today's topic is going to be adjustments. Why do we adjust? What is an adjustment? I'm going to give my definition of adjustment. I'm going to read off the paper because I wrote it down and it's pretty long. Adjustment. Changing the way something is to conform to a predetermined constant. The constant in drumming or music would be time or tempo. So why do we adjust to play in time? We adjust because it is uncomfortable to play out of time. Now I'm going to draw a diagram to visually express what I'm trying to say. Start speeding it up now. So this line, so it starts at A and it goes to B. This line is going to represent time or tempo. And if you're above the line, you're fast. And if you're below the line, you're slow. And from my previous video, I talked about how the first attack or the first note is going to be early. So the first note of a young student is not going to be in time. It's going to be slightly fast. So let me draw this really quick. So a student's first note is going to be fast, and because it's uncomfortable to not play in time, they're going to adjust to play slow. So eventually, after a couple measures, they will adjust to play in time. Like this. So slowly, it'll be, if it's supposed to be a perfect arc, but slowly they'll adjust to play in time. But because people aren't perfect, they over-adjust. And when you over-adjust, you end up slow. And like I said, it's uncomfortable to not play in time, so you adjust again. And this pattern continues to look like this. And as you can see, the degree to which you adjust diminishes over time. And this diagram, the first time I drew it, it got me thinking, what else has these same properties? Water. So water is, whenever it's undisturbed, it's flat. So it's a constant. The top of the water is basically a perfect plane. And when the water gets disturbed, it creates ripples or little waves. And the waves get smaller and smaller and smaller like as time goes on. And I wanted a way to relate this to drumming, and I figured it out. So imagine there's a pond that's perfectly calm, and this pond represents playing in time. But as a drummer, you have to initiate force to play in time, and every single time you play, you have to throw a stone into the calm pond. And when you throw a stone into a calm pond, it creates these ripples. And the larger the stone, the longer it takes for these ripples to go away, and the smaller the stone, the less time it takes. So how this is related is younger drummers, more inexperienced drummers, have larger stones, and more experienced drummers have smaller stones. In this metaphor, when you practice, you're sanding off a layer of the stone, and the stone gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller every single time you practice. So eventually, if you started out with the stone this big, after maybe a year, the stone will be this big. So whenever you throw your stone into the pond, it takes a lot less time for the pond to calm. And maybe after that year, you keep sanding it down until it gets to the size of a golf ball. Think about how little time it takes for the pond to calm after you just throw a golf ball in there. And you can go even further. You can sand the golf ball size stone into the size of like a Tic Tac. And then eventually it'll get to the size of a grain of sand. And that grain of sand can turn to dust. Only then will you realize that you didn't need to throw the stone into the pond to make it calm. Very few people understand that you can just set the stone aside and let the pond be calm by itself. These people are called prodigies. I'm not one of them. I know very few people who are. But most of us have to work very hard to sand away our stone. And it's that hard work of sanding away the layers of our stones that make it worth seeing how calm the pond is. Drumming is one of those things to where you have the answer until someone asks you the question. So it's like you have to put in all this work to realize that you don't have to put in any work. Goodbye.